Humanity had been preparing for many things, but nothing could have prepared them for the day they received a message from the stars. For decades, Earth had been scanning the universe for signs of intelligent life. But when the Vraxians, a race far more advanced than anything humans had imagined, made their first contact, it wasn't a peaceful greeting. It was an ultimatum. The message came through a frequency that had been reserved for interstellar communication. It wasn't just a call for peace. It was a demand. The Vraxians wanted Earth to surrender. Their message was cold, calculated, and terrifyingly clear. Surrender your planet, or face the consequences. At first, Earth's leaders didn't believe it. How could a species so powerful, with technology so far beyond their own, choose to make demands like this? Surely, it was a misunderstanding. Humanity had advanced in leaps and bounds, but no one on Earth could truly understand the power the Vraxians wielded. They dismissed the message as a joke, a misunderstanding at best, and at worst, a failed attempt at diplomacy. But as days passed, something began to change. The Vraxian fleet arrived in Earth's orbit. They were not here to negotiate. They were here to show force. The alien ships were massive, with sleek, metallic surfaces that gleamed like sharp blades in the sunlight. Each ship was larger than anything humanity had ever built, and they hovered silently above Earth's cities, a constant reminder of the threat looming over the planet. Despite the warnings and threats, humanity's leaders remained defiant. They had fought wars before, survived catastrophes, and rebuilt from the ashes. They believed that they could handle whatever came their way. The idea of surrender was alien to them. Humans had never been good at giving up. So they began to prepare for the inevitable. A global military alliance was formed, uniting all nations under one banner to fight against the alien threat. General Michael Evers, a seasoned leader known for his strategic brilliance, was appointed to lead Earth's defense. He gathered his forces, reviewing Earth's technology, trying to find any way to combat the overwhelming power of the Vraxians. The human fleet was small in comparison, but they had something that the Vraxians did not: determination. While military preparations began, there was a growing sense of unease. In the streets, people whispered about the alien ships above them. Governments reassured the public, but the fear was palpable. It wasn't just about the threat of war. It was the fear of the unknown. Humans had always thought they were the masters of their own world, the only intelligent beings in the universe. Now, they had been proven wrong. And so, humanity's greatest test was about to begin. Would they be able to stand up to the Vraxians, or would they fold under the weight of an alien empire far beyond their understanding? The fate of Earth was in their hands, and for the first time in history, humanity faced a challenge it couldn't ignore. But what the Vraxians didn't realize was that Earth wasn't just a planet, it was a home. And humans would defend it with everything they had. The world held its breath as the Vraxian fleet hovered above Earth. The massive ships seemed to block out the sun, casting long shadows over entire cities. No one had ever seen anything like it. The sky was filled with ships that looked like silver behemoths, their sharp, sleek designs unlike anything humanity had ever imagined. They did not land. They did not make a sound. They simply hovered, waiting. Then, a single craft detached from the fleet and descended slowly towards Earth. It was the flagship, and it carried with it the message of the Vraxians. It landed in a barren desert far from any major cities, but even the isolation of the desert could not shield the world from the impact of what was happening. News stations, military satellites, and civilians alike watched as the alien ship touched down. People from all over the world knew this was a turning point in history. The arrival of the Vraxians would change everything. A strange hum filled the air as the doors of the ship opened. From within, a tall figure stepped out. The alien was imposing, its appearance a mix of elegance and intimidation. Zoreth, the Vraxian envoy, stood tall with his shimmering skin that seemed to reflect the sun like a mirror. His eyes, dark and piercing, scanned the barren landscape as he took in the sight of Earth for the first time. Zoreth was not here to negotiate. He was here to command. His presence alone exuded power. His long, sharp features and towering height made him seem even more intimidating. His voice, when he spoke, had a deep, resonating quality that echoed across the land. The human race is weak. Your time on this planet is coming to an end. Zoreth's voice boomed through a speaker system that echoed across the desert. It was a message meant for every human on Earth. We, the Vraxians, demand your immediate surrender. We are not here to negotiate. We are here to conquer. Refuse, and you will face annihilation. Humanity's leaders, watching from afar, were in shock. This was not the peaceful first contact they had hoped for. This was war. General Evers, along with other world leaders, knew there was no room for hesitation. The Vraxians had made their demands clear. They had shown their power. Now it was up to humanity to decide. Would they bow to the might of the aliens, or would they stand their ground? Back on Earth, people reacted in different ways. Some were terrified, unable to fathom a way to fight against such an advanced force. Others, however, felt a spark of resistance. It was as if the challenge had awakened something deep within humanity. They weren't just going to lie down and accept defeat. They weren't going to let their planet be taken without a fight. As Zoreth stood before Earth's leaders on a giant screen, he made one final threat. You have one chance to surrender. Do not test us further. The power of the Vraxians will crush you. Your technology, your strength, it means nothing against us. And with that, Zoreth turned and disappeared back into his ship. The doors closed, and the ship lifted off again, joining the fleet hovering in the sky. The countdown had begun. Earth had no choice but to prepare for war. The news of the Vraxian threats spread like wildfire across the globe. People watched in horror as the alien fleet loomed over Earth, its presence a constant reminder of the power humanity was up against. Governments scrambled to respond, their messages of reassurance doing little to calm the panic growing in the streets. The world had never faced anything like this. The Vraxians were not just an enemy. They were an overwhelming force that no one could ignore. General Michael Evers stood in a command room, surrounded by military leaders and the brightest minds humanity had to offer. His face was grim, but his eyes showed determination. He knew the stakes. Earth had always been a place of conflict and survival. But this was different. This was an enemy that could wipe them out without breaking a sweat. This is not just about defending our world. This is about our survival, Evers said, his voice steady but firm. We will not bend to their demands. We will fight, and we will win. The leaders of the world had come together under the United Earth Alliance, UEA, setting aside their differences for the first time in history to face a common enemy. Military forces from all nations pooled their resources to create a unified defense force. But despite the unity, there was doubt. How could Earth's forces, small compared to the Vraxian fleet, possibly stand a chance? The best scientists and engineers were called to action. They worked around the clock, developing new weapons and strategies that might give humanity a fighting chance. Earth's military had some advanced technology, but it was nothing compared to what the Vraxians possessed. Still, they had one thing the aliens didn't: human ingenuity. Humans had a unique ability to adapt and think on their feet, to innovate when faced with impossible odds. In underground bunkers, in military bases across the globe, human soldiers trained relentlessly, preparing for the inevitable. Their warships, though smaller and less advanced, were now being outfitted with the best technology Earth could produce. Still, General Evers knew that even if they had the best weapons, it wasn't enough to beat the Vraxians alone. They needed something more. Meanwhile, civilian leaders and everyday people rallied behind the cause. Protests, speeches, and messages of hope flooded the media. Ordinary humans, many of whom had never even seen a battle, were ready to fight for their planet. They sent messages of defiance, promising that humanity would not go down without a fight. Their resilience became a symbol of hope for those who were terrified of what was coming. In the midst of it all, a plan began to form. General Evers knew that they couldn't take on the Vractions head-on with brute force alone. But there was something in the depths of Earth's history that could help. A secret weapon, buried deep beneath the surface. It was an ancient piece of technology, long forgotten by time. If they could unlock its power, they might just stand a chance against the aliens. As the days passed, tensions continued to rise. Humanity's leaders knew they were running out of time. They had to act fast. The Vractions had made their threat clear, and if they didn't respond soon, Earth would fall. General Evers gathered his forces, ready to take the fight to the Vractions, knowing that the future of the human race depended on their next move. But one thing was certain: Earth was ready. They had no choice but to face this challenge head-on. No one was going to give up without a fight. The air was thick with tension. Across the world, people watched as the Vraction fleet continued to hover ominously above Earth. Their ships had been in orbit for days, silent and still, but the threat they posed was undeniable. The governments of Earth had been negotiating, trying to find a peaceful solution, but every attempt was met with silence or an even harsher threat from the Vractions. Then, General Michael Evers made a decision that would change everything. He knew humanity could not afford to cower in fear. They couldn't just wait for the Vractions to make the first move. They needed to send a message that would make the aliens understand one simple truth: Earth wasn't going to surrender without a fight. The United Earth Alliance came together to draft a single, powerful message. It was a message that would be sent across every communication channel, to every corner of the globe. Every frequency would carry the same message, loud and clear. The words were simple but filled with defiance. Humans don't surrender. We conquer. General Evers had no doubt that the Vractions would see it. The message was broadcast for all to hear, but more importantly, it was meant to reach the aliens. Earth was not intimidated. They would not bow to the demands of the Vractions. Humanity had endured countless wars, survived unimaginable hardships, and fought for their right to exist. They would do it again. The message reverberated through every corner of Earth. People watched in awe as the broadcast played on every screen, every radio station, every social media platform. It was the voice of defiance, echoing from every human on Earth. The world had come together, united in a way that had never been seen before. Across the world, people responded with overwhelming support. Protests, rallies, and speeches filled the streets. In every country, in every city, humans sent a clear message to the Vractions: we will fight for our planet. The fear that had gripped Earth for days began to fade, replaced by an unshakable sense of unity and determination. Humanity had decided, if they were going to go down, they were going to go down fighting. But the message was not just for the Vractions. It was for the people of Earth, too. The world had been divided for so long, but now, with their very existence on the line, they had set aside their differences. The message was a symbol of the new world order, one in which humans stood together, no matter the cost. Back in the command center, General Evers watched as the message went live. He knew that the aliens would soon respond. But there was no turning back now. Earth had sent a challenge, and the Vractions would have to decide how to respond. Soon after the broadcast, the Vraction fleet shifted in the sky. The ships that had once been still began to move. They were not retreating. They were preparing for action. The humans' message had been received. Now the fate of Earth would be decided. And for the first time, humans were ready to face their enemy head-on, knowing they had sent the most powerful message of all. They would not give up. The Vractions were not amused by humanity's defiant message. For days, they had observed Earth, their mighty fleet hovering above the planet like a dark cloud. Now they had received an answer, a challenge that they hadn't expected. But they weren't worried. The Vractions had always seen themselves as the dominant race in the universe. No other species had ever dared to stand up to them in such a way. And so they dismissed the humans as no more than a nuisance. Zoreth, the Vraction envoy, stood on the bridge of the flagship, his gaze fixed on the planet below. He was calm, collected, and confident. His species had wiped out entire civilizations without breaking a sweat. The humans, despite their bravado, were no different. To Zoreth, they were just another primitive species that would soon be crushed under the weight of their power. The humans are foolish, Zoreth said coldly to his command staff. They think their message changes anything. They are nothing compared to us. He turned to the view screen, which displayed Earth in all its glory. The humans had sent their message, but to Zoreth, it was a sign of weakness. Their refusal to submit only proved they had no idea what they were up against. The Vraxians had already shown their strength. The humans had no hope of standing against them. Zoreth's orders were simple: show them the full might of the Vraxian fleet. He gave the command to engage. The Vraxian ships began to fire on Earth's defenses. Their energy beams sliced through the human warships with terrifying ease. The humans had prepared their best forces, but it was clear that they were outmatched. Earth's ships exploded in bursts of fire and debris as the alien weapons cut through them effortlessly. The humans fought bravely, but the Vraxian power was overwhelming. Back on Earth, the world watched in horror as the attack unfolded. News broadcasts showed the destruction in real time. The Vraxian ships wiping out the human fleet with brutal efficiency. The message from the Vraxians had been clear: Earth was no match for them. Yet, as the dust settled and the battlefield cleared, something unexpected began to happen. Humanity didn't surrender. Despite the overwhelming odds, they didn't give up. On Earth's streets, in military command centers, and even among civilians, the fire of defiance burned brighter. The Vraxian attack had only made them stronger. The humans refused to believe that their fight was over. They would rebuild, and they would continue to fight. General Evers, watching the devastation unfold, was resolute. His face was grim, but his eyes showed no fear. The Vraxians had underestimated humanity's will to survive. He knew that despite the destruction, they hadn't lost yet. Humanity would fight back, and they would find a way to win. It wasn't about power. It was about heart. Prepare the counterattack, Evers ordered. This isn't over, not by a long shot. The world held its breath. The Vraxians had shown their might, but the humans had shown something far more important: their unbreakable spirit. The battle for Earth was far from over. The Vraxian assault had left Earth shaken, but not broken. The world's governments, in a desperate bid to regain control, had begun to search for any advantage they could find. General Michael Evers knew that the fight was far from over. The aliens had proven their power, but humanity had something that they didn't: the ability to adapt, innovate, and survive. As the remnants of Earth's military forces regrouped, General Evers turned to his most trusted officers, deep in the heart of an underground command center. The situation was dire. The Vraxians had destroyed much of humanity's fleet, and their forces were rapidly closing in. But Evers had a plan. It was something that had been discovered only recently, buried deep within Earth's history, hidden for centuries. And now it was their last hope. The humans had stumbled upon a long-forgotten artifact, hidden deep in the heart of the Earth. The artifact was not of human design. It was a relic from a time long before humanity had even risen. A time when ancient civilizations, long lost to history, had once ruled the planet. The artifact was said to have incredible power, far beyond anything humanity had ever seen. But it was also dangerous, its true purpose still shrouded in mystery. No one knew how it worked, or what it could do, but the legends surrounding it were enough to give the human leaders hope. "It's our only chance," General Evers said, his voice steady but urgent. "This artifact may be our last shot at surviving this. If we can unlock its power, we might stand a chance against the Vraxians." The artifact was hidden beneath an ancient temple, deep in a remote part of the world. For centuries, it had been guarded by secret societies, passed down through generations of protectors. When humanity began to discover it, no one had realized the true significance of what they had found. But now, with the world at war, it was the only hope left. Evers sent his most skilled team to retrieve the artifact. It wasn't just a matter of finding it. It was a matter of understanding how to use it. The team was made up of archaeologists, scientists, and military specialists who had studied the artifact for weeks, but even they weren't sure what they were dealing with. As they carefully uncovered the artifact, it began to hum with a strange energy. The air around them crackled as if the very ground itself was alive. The scientists quickly worked to understand its technology, their minds racing. They soon discovered that the artifact was not just a weapon. It was a device capable of manipulating space-time itself. It could bend the fabric of reality, creating forces of unimaginable power. But using the artifact came at a cost. It wasn't something that could be used lightly. The risks were high. Using the artifact could cause massive destruction, not just to the Vraxians, but to Earth itself. If humanity was going to survive, they would need to take the risk. But they had no choice. The Vraxians had already shown that they would destroy everything in their path. The decision was made. The artifact would be used. General Evers stood before the artifact, knowing that the next steps could change everything. This was humanity's last chance to fight back. "Prepare for the counterattack," he said. "We're going to show the Vraxians just how wrong they were to underestimate us." The time for waiting had ended. Humanity had made its move, and now the fate of Earth was in the hands of the general and his soldiers. With the artifact's power finally unlocked, General Evers knew they had one shot at turning the tide. He stood on the command deck, staring at the monitors as they showed the massive Vraxian fleet hovering in orbit above Earth. Their ships loomed like giants, powerful and merciless. The newly developed countermeasures, powered by the artifact, had been installed on Earth's remaining warships. These ships were now ready to launch the most dangerous mission humanity had ever attempted. The artifact's technology had proven to be a weapon of unimaginable strength, but no one knew what the final consequences would be. It was a calculated risk, but the risk of doing nothing was far worse. "Activate the weapon," General Evers ordered. His voice was firm, yet there was an undercurrent of uncertainty in the air. This was it, the moment they either succeeded or failed. A team of scientists, now part of the operation, activated the artifact's core system. The device hummed to life, and the sky seemed to pulse with energy. Earth's warships, now fully powered by the artifact, flew into position. A new kind of force filled the air, an invisible but powerful presence, as though the very fabric of space had shifted. The ship's weapon systems were enhanced, and their shields were reinforced by the artifact's energy, giving them a fighting chance against the overwhelming Vraxian fleet. As Earth's forces prepared to engage, the Vraxians watched. Zorath, the Vraxian leader, stood on his ship, observing the humans' movements. He had expected Earth to be crushed with ease, but the sight of their preparation gave him pause. The humans were determined, and there was a fire in their eyes that Zorath had not seen before. Still, he was confident that they were no match for the Vraxian might. Then, without warning, General Evers gave the signal. The first wave of human ships launched their attack. Massive energy blasts shot toward the Vraxian fleet, powerful enough to make even Zorath's forces hesitate. The Vraxians fired back, their weapons devastating and quick, but the humans were not backing down. Earth's fleet was small, but the power of the artifact gave them an edge, allowing them to fight back in ways no one expected. The battle raged for hours. Explosions filled the sky as the two forces collided, the Earth's fleet fighting with everything they had. The humans' courage was their greatest weapon. They fought like nothing else mattered, as though the survival of their world depended on it. And, in a way, it did. On the battlefield, the Vraxian ships began to show signs of struggle. Their shields flickered and weakened, and some ships began to break apart under the pressure of the human onslaught. The artifact was doing its job. It was bending space, causing the Vraxian ships to experience strange distortions in time and space that made it harder for them to focus their fire. It was a powerful, unpredictable force, and the Vraxians were beginning to lose control. Zoreth was furious. He had never expected this level of resistance. He ordered his fleet to regroup and launch a full counterattack. But the humans had already anticipated his move. Earth's ships, though outnumbered, had a new advantage. They were no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their future. The artifact had given them the power they needed to turn the tide. "Keep pushing forward," General Evers shouted as his fleet pressed on. "This is our world, and we will not give it up." The final moments of the battle were a blur of fire and destruction. The Vraxian fleet, once invincible, was crumbling under the relentless force of humanity's determination. Zoreth's forces were retreating, and Earth's fleet continued to press forward, determined to finish what they had started. As the battle came to a close, the Vraxians realized that humanity was not as helpless as they had thought. They had underestimated Earth's strength. The humans had sent a message, one that the Vraxians could no longer ignore. The skies above Earth were filled with the smoke and fire of battle. What had started as an overwhelming invasion by the Vraxian fleet had now turned into a desperate retreat. General Evers' strategy, fueled by the ancient artifact, had caught the Vraxians off guard. Their once imposing forces were faltering, and for the first time since the conflict began, Zoreth began to question the Vraxian superiority. Zoreth stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the chaos unfold. His once confident demeanor was now clouded with doubt. He had never encountered an enemy like this before. The humans were far more resilient than he had anticipated. Their ability to adapt, their relentless spirit, and the unexpected power of the artifact had thrown his fleet into disarray. What should have been a quick conquest had turned into a struggle for survival. General Zoreth, his second-in-command, Callan, said, stepping up beside him, "Our fleet is losing ground. Their ships are fighting with a strength we've never seen before. We need to regroup and reassess." Zoreth's piercing eyes never left the view screen. The sight of Vraxian ships exploding in space, their weapons ineffective against the humans' newfound power, was something he had never thought possible. The artifact was causing more than just physical damage. It was disrupting their technology, distorting their ship systems, and creating an unpredictable battlefield. "We underestimated them," Zoreth muttered, his voice tinged with frustration. "The humans are not as weak as we thought. They fight like they have nothing to lose." Callan looked at Zoreth, confused. "But they are still far inferior in strength. They shouldn't have lasted this long." Zoreth shook his head. "That's the problem. It's not about strength. It's about something we don't understand. The humans are driven by a fire that we've never encountered before. They fight not just for survival, but for something deeper. Their world, their people, their future." The words hit Zoreth like a blow. He had always viewed the universe as a place where power determined everything. The Vraxians were stronger, their technology more advanced, and they had never encountered a species that could defy their might. Yet here, on Earth, he found himself in a fight that was far different from anything he had known. His mind raced, memories flashing before him. Memories of the countless civilizations his fleet had destroyed, their people cowering in fear, their resistance nothing more than a brief, futile spark. But the humans, they weren't afraid. They were angry. They were fighting for more than just their lives. They were fighting for their very existence. Zoreth finally turned to Callan, his voice low but filled with a new sense of respect. "We have miscalculated. This will not be an easy victory." Callan frowned. "What do you suggest we do, General?" Zoreth paused, his mind weighing the options. The humans had proven themselves more resourceful than the Vraxians had expected. If they continued their assault with the same intensity, Earth might just survive. But he also knew that the artifact's power was finite. It could not sustain this level of energy forever. Soon, the artifact would lose its ability to bend space and time, and the humans would be vulnerable once more. He turned back to face the massive display of Earth below. The human forces were relentless. Their ships were battered, But they fought on. Zoreth could see it in their eyes, their will to survive. "We'll have to try something else," he said quietly. "It's time to offer them a choice." The battle had not been won. But in that moment, Zoreth realized that it wasn't just about strength anymore. The humans had changed the rules of the game. And for the first time in his long career, Zoreth wasn't sure how this fight would end. The battle raged on as humanity's fleet pushed forward, their warships battered but filled with determination. Earth's forces had been fighting for hours, their weapons powered by the mysterious artifact that had turned the tide of the war. The Vraxians, once certain of their victory, were now in disarray. Zoreth, the Vraxian leader, could no longer deny that his forces were losing. The artifact was disrupting everything. Their ships, their systems, their tactics. The battle was no longer just a fight for survival. It had become a test of wills. General Evers stood at the command center, his eyes glued to the screen in front of him. His fleet had taken heavy losses, but they were still in the fight. The Vraxian ships had begun to retreat, but the humans knew better than to get complacent. This was not a victory yet, but a chance to secure one. "Keep pushing," Evers said, his voice firm. "We cannot let them regroup. Now is our chance." His orders were clear, and the human fleet responded with all the firepower they had left. The Vraxian ships were slower now, their energy flickering and unstable, but they were still formidable. Zoreth had not given up. In fact, the Vraxian leader had one final plan in mind, one last move that he hoped would crush the humans' resolve once and for all. On his flagship, Zoreth paced angrily, his mind working furiously. His fleet was falling apart. His forces were scattered. But there was still one thing he could do. If he couldn't defeat the humans with his ships, he would make sure Earth would never be the same. The artifact that had caused so much chaos was the key. He would destroy it, and with it, Earth's ability to fight back. "General Zoreth, we are ready," his second-in-command, Kellen, said, standing at attention. "The final weapon is in place. We can destroy the artifact now." Zoreth looked out over the battle below. His fleet was near collapse, but if he could take out the artifact, the humans would have no hope. Their weapon would be useless, and the Vraxians would finally have their victory. He nodded grimly. "Do it," Zoreth ordered. The final weapon fired. A massive beam of energy shot from the Vraxian flagship toward Earth's surface, aimed directly at the artifact. The beam tore through space, cutting a path of destruction as it homed in on its target. General Evers watched as the beam approached. His heart raced as he realized what was happening. If the Vraxians destroyed the artifact, Earth would be defenseless. The battle would be lost, and humanity would fall. But there was no time to waste. They had to stop the beam. "Deploy all remaining ships," Evers shouted. "We're not giving up yet." The human fleet surged forward, but it was clear that the Vraxian weapon was too powerful. As the beam closed in, the final moments felt like a lifetime. Evers gripped the edge of the command table, his mind racing. Then, with one final act of desperation, he gave the order to launch Earth's last-ditch countermeasure, a powerful energy pulse designed to intercept and destroy the Vraxian beam before it reached its target. The pulse shot forward, a brilliant wave of energy. It collided with the Vraxian beam just moments before impact, causing a massive explosion that rocked both fleets. The shockwave was felt across the battlefield, and for a moment, everything went still. When the dust cleared, Zoreth's flagship was in ruins. The Vraxian beam had been destroyed, and the artifact remained intact. The humans had won, at least for now. Zoreth stared in disbelief. He had lost. The Vraxians had underestimated the human spirit. As Earth's forces regrouped, General Evers breathed a sigh of relief. The Vraxian fleet was retreating, their forces in disarray. The battle had been long and brutal, but humanity had endured. They had sent a message to the Vraxians, and to the universe. Earth would not be easily defeated. But as Zoreth's fleet disappeared into the depths of space, Evers knew that this was only the beginning. The Vraxians would return, and humanity would have to be ready. But for now, Earth had won, and they had proven something even more important, that they would never surrender. As the remnants of the Vraxian fleet retreated into the darkness of space, Earth's defenses stood tall. The skies, once filled with the smoke and fire of battle, were now silent. The human fleet, battered but intact, looked down at the planet they had just saved. The battle was over. For now, Earth had won. General Evers stood on the command deck of the flagship, staring at the view of the planet below. The Earth he had fought so hard to protect was still here, still standing, and still free. But he knew that the victory wasn't just his or the military's, it was humanity's. It had been their unity, their determination, and their will to survive that had turned the tide. The alien threat had come, but humanity had proven they were not easily defeated. As the dust settled, leaders from all over the world began to speak. A message of hope, unity, and triumph spread across the globe. The human race had faced its greatest challenge and emerged victorious. People cheered in the streets, their voices echoing in celebration. Earth had stood up to an alien empire and had won. But amidst the celebration, there was also a sense of reflection. Humanity had come so close to losing everything. They had faced destruction, and yet they had refused to give up. It was a reminder of the strength that lay within them, a strength that they would need to carry forward. In the days that followed, the world began to rebuild. The damage from the battle was significant, but Earth's spirit was even stronger. New alliances were formed, and nations that had once been divided came together in the face of a common enemy. The Vraxians might have been forced to retreat, but humanity knew that their victory was not guaranteed forever. The galaxy was vast, and more threats could come from the stars. But humanity had shown that they could adapt, fight, and survive. They had a new sense of purpose, a new unity. General Evers addressed the world in a live broadcast, standing before the leaders of the United Earth Alliance. His voice was calm but filled with pride as he spoke to his people. "We have faced the greatest challenge in our history, and we have shown the universe that humanity cannot be crushed. We will continue to defend our planet, but we will also reach for the stars. The victory we've earned today is not just for us. It is for our children, for our future, and for every human being who believes in the strength of our species." The message resonated with every human, from the youngest child to the oldest elder. The Vraxian attack had not only tested their strength, it had awakened something deep within humanity. The desire to protect their world, to protect each other, and to never give up, no matter the odds. As the Earth began to rebuild, General Evers and his team continued to work. The artifact, the key to their victory, would be studied, its power understood and harnessed. But they knew that the road ahead would not be easy. The Vraxians might one day return, but humanity would be ready. And even if the stars themselves came to take Earth, the message would remain clear. Humans did not surrender. They conquered. Earth had survived. And now, the galaxy knew that humanity would not be a species to be ignored.